What's going on, guys? My name is Jake,
I'm Jesus.
and this is your Body Comp Prescription, where we help you navigate through all things health and fitness. Hope you're all having a great day. And if you haven't already, be sure to follow us on Instagram at bodycomprx. But Jesus, why don't you tell them what we're talking about today?
Hey guys, yes, welcome. Today's video is going to be about goals, right? Everyone always has their own personal goals, whether that's outside the fitness world or within fitness. But yeah, today we thought it would be best to share everything we have to say about goals, maybe how to achieve them, our personal experiences with our personal goals. I think that'd be pretty sweet for you guys to hear.
Yeah, and I think also and the way that we're going to do this is we're going to kind of go over our own personal fitness journeys. So, we've heard some feedback from a couple of you guys saying that, you like hearing our experiences, like, you like hearing what we've done, how we did it. Obviously a lot of you know that we're graduates. We graduated from university with degrees in exercise science. So, I think that kind of puts a label on us a little bit, and we want to kind of clarify some things. We're not, just because we have further education doesn't mean we know everything, so we want to, or we didn't at least know everything that we've known now. It's always been a process for us, and it's going to continue to be a learning process for us. So we figured that maybe sharing our fitness journeys would be something that you guys would be interested in, and hopefully this helps and gives you a little bit more background on what we've done, how we did it, all that good stuff. But Jesus, why don't you take it away? Why don't you start from the beginning and kind of tell them how your whole fitness journey started?
Yeah. Before I start with my fitness journey, I like to acknowledge what you said. I think the beauty of all this is that through these years you still continue to learn, and that's kind of something that I think you guys should take away from all this, because even to this day we're always constantly learning. I think that's what we strive for here on this podcast. Right. But yeah, so I guess starting from where it all started, I guess it all started for me in high school. If you guys don't remember, in previous episodes we briefly have discussed, I ran track and field, cross country, and I also played basketball in high school. So where my training really happened, it was consistently a lot of running. We did a few mornings where we did weight room, but weight room was usually body weight exercises. I mean, when you're a cross country and track and field athlete, especially if you're like a long distance runner like I was, building strength or bodybuilding, it wasn't necessarily the goal. It was more of functional movement. But that was kind of like the extent to what I had about fitness, right? The only I didn't really require myself to do more training outside of school, because I was constantly running. It was pretty much almost every day. I think the times I didn't run were pretty much Sundays. I would run sometimes Saturdays. So it was pretty much 6 days a week I was constantly running. So you can only imagine the mileage I had, right? And then kind of like moving on to college, right? So in college, I didn't go on to run at a university level, or play basketball for that sake. So it was kind of like my first experience being on my own and being responsible for myself to continue my training, or what kind of training I wanted to do, what my goals were. Everything kind of changed. I think so. If you don't remember, I went to a Mount St. Mary's University. It was a totally different university. I was going there for nursing at the time. I thought that's what I wanted to do. And I didn't really have a background in fitness other than the exercises I would used to do, right? And I think in basketball, Jake and I played together, and the most we would do was I remember doing like squats, bench press.
And I'll jump in here too, because Jesus mentioned we were on the basketball team together, and we did do more weight training than his other sports that he played, cross country and track. But even then, basketball is a very cardio heavy sport. So, we didn't really like the weight training that we were doing was not from a certified strength and conditioning coach. It was our basketball coaches saying, oh, let's do some shoulders because we need stronger shoulders to take contact, or, we need to work lower body. So, we can have more explosiveness when we jump or something like that. And all of it was essentially like bro science, we were just doing exercises to do exercises in theory to get stronger. But as far as basketball goes, we were in the weight room, but without like a purpose, really, in my opinion.
Yeah, and I think that's most people, right? If whether you were in sport or whether you were just in high school working out, you kind of just did the very basic exercises, and not necessarily they're not bad, but there's really no like science, or you just kind of do all the basic movements that you've been told or you've seen to quote unquote get stronger. Sorry.
Hmm.
Um, so yeah, so going into college, I had no background in fitness really. I all I knew is I could run pretty quick, pretty fast, and and my legs were pretty strong. And then it wasn't until I had a friend out there where we would start training. He kind of introduced having like a weekly split, but I wasn't consistent with it, and I think that was because the lack of education on the importance of working out, the lack of nutrition,
Hmm.
as far as knowing, being informed of when you're freshman in college, your metabolism, at least mine, was like all-time high, right? I thought in high school I could put down a whole box of pizza, no effect, because the
Hmm.
next day I would be running about like 5 miles,
Yeah.
right? But in college that's not the case, right? So if those you listening may have known me from high school, post high school, and you know that I put on a few pounds, right? I got old. I was like 130, 130, 135 max
In
out of
high
high
school,
school.
yeah.
Yeah. And then in college I gained about like at least 50 pounds, maybe more.
Hmm.
And like I said, that came from not understanding that I'm no longer running or working out as much. um, so yeah, that's kind of what happened there. And then I eventually transferred over to Cal Lutheran. That's kind of like where Jake and I kind of rekindled our friendship, and we were working out more. I uh, I got into exercise science, and well, previously I would like to say I did go to community college for a year, and I took a exercise science course. And I think I like to point it to that because I think that's what kind of got me into training. I
Hmm.
had this one professor where we had class, and then this other, like, our lab was literally in the weight room, and we had to
Oh, yeah.
take what we learned and apply it into our own workout regimen. And that was pretty cool because it was literally just me, and I got to make my own plan. And I realized then, I was like, wow, I was like, I need to, I think that lab, or workout sessions were like twice a week. But that was that was the only thing I would do. But
Mm.
I then started understanding the importance of working out, and understanding your nutrition, and understanding all these many factors that go into fitness, right? And it
Hmm.
wasn't until maybe I went to Cal Lutheran where I really, you learn so much, from all their classes, all our functional anatomy, exercise physiology, that go into depth about all the importance of these many aspects, right?
Yeah, did like that switch from like nursing to like exercise science, like did is that the main thing that changed your focus? Like did that like change your goals at all? Because I know you just mentioned like you put on some weight after high school, but
Mhm.
because you didn't have the education, did now having better access to that specific education as it relates to exercise make you want to change things? Did it just like get you excited? Like what did
Yeah, I
that do
think
for you?
Yeah, I think it did a little bit of both, or all the above, because I was learning, and when I went to Mount St. Mary's, I learned pre-nursing courses. I learned anatomy, I learned physiology,
Hmm.
right? But when I was doing exercise science based courses, it was more on how it actually affects like sports, athletes in sports. And I think that's
Application
what,
and stuff.
yeah, it was like all application. I was like, wow, I was like, this is really cool because, if you know me, I'm a huge, sports fan. I love pretty much all sports.
Hmm.
So I was able to apply it real quick and realize, like, wow, I thought it was so fascinating how these big athletes, how they train, and the purpose of training, and how specific they get with their training. I think
Hmm.
that's kind of what pushed me into exercise science. And then once I got into the school, Cal Lutheran with you, it was set sail from there, because that pretty much made me um, become a big nerd in all things exercise science, because I love finding out how athletes got to their goal, and how they became these top level athletes.
Yeah, for sure. And then just to kind of like wrap it up real quick, with that change in like focus, obviously you went from like a long distance runner to, you know, a really hardcore student of exercise science. Like what did you struggle with most following the whole like weight gain process? Because I'm sure there's a lot of people that are interested in knowing like what obstacles you had to deal with, you know, because that's you know, that's a pretty relatable thing, I would say. You know, is there
Yeah.
anything that particularly like stands out that, you know, you had to deal with or are still dealing with or anything like that as it comes to, you know, post high
Yeah.
school?
Yeah, so like I said, like all I knew back then was long distance running, really. I, I wasn't really trained. I didn't really know people. I mean, I knew Jake, but the people, the athletes around me were all pretty much long distance running. I didn't have anyone to be like, oh yeah, like I love working out, like bodybuilding. So my extent of knowledge, prior to going to undergrad and studying exercise science was very minimal. Um, and I think one thing like I struggled with is like I had to go through what I call growing pains, right?
Okay.
um, so like if you were someone who wanted to get into working out or even running, after your first initial workouts or running sessions, you feel sore and it hurts. It's
Mhm.
almost like it's so bad that I think most people would say like, oh, like it kind of discourages them because like, dude, it hurts a
Mhm.
lot, you're really sore, right?
Yeah.
I basically had to go through that process all over again because I was already pretty advanced in running, and now I had to do uh training, like with actual weight, increasing my weight, having progressive overload. And I kind of struggled with that because I hated that feeling where I was basically starting at ground zero. I was, all my exercises, I felt like I was really weak on everything.
Mhm.
All my muscles weren't, where I thought I was going to be at. I was like, oh yeah, I was a pretty great long distance runner. I'm gonna be pretty good in the gym. I'll catch on pretty quickly. But it was it was a pretty eye-opening experience because I had to learn to be consistent, and my expectations had to be, realistic. I had to know that this was a long-term process. I
Yeah.
and I like I said, it was almost kind of like learning a new language because you had to learn different exercises, how to apply your different exercises, knowing
Mhm.
your limitations because just because you're good at one sport doesn't mean you'll be good at this other thing. And certain movements for myself weren't, you know, weren't that great for me.
Mm, yeah, definitely. Is there anything that like helped you get to that point? Like helped you get to that understanding that, you know, you like were once great, you know, and then like now you had to completely like scrap it and start over. Is there anything that helped you get to that point of like humbling yourself, if that's what you want to call it?
Yeah, I would say, I you quickly learn that it's not about who moves the most weight, right? I
Mm,
was always like, because I would work out with anyone. I think a few times I worked out with you, and I'd be like, wow, like you're lifting like 3 times the amount of weight I'm moving, and it was kind of discouraging. But what one thing that helped is know knowing that your own progress is the most impressive part about this.
mhm,
You know, where you start and where you end, or seeing that progress, how you continue to improve is the most impressive part. And it has to impress yourself so then you could continue moving on. And I think I kind of had to learn that a long way. I think it has to do a little bit with my ego, right? Like I said, I was pretty good at running, so I was like, oh yeah, I was like I could outrun anybody. But when it came to the gym working out, I was like, yeah, I'm not that strong.
yeah.
um, and I struggle with that. I think also having surrounding yourself with people with similar goals or kind of like accountability buddies. Um, I kind of, luckily I have you. I think when after college, you and I got closer, even more closer than we were in high school. It was pretty great knowing that I had you because I had someone where it'd be like, oh, get this, I want to try out this exercise, or there's someone else I was able to run my ideas or thoughts to, and that kind of like pushed me and kind of got me excited because if not, I think I probably would have been like not discouraged, but it wouldn't be the same because I'd been like, oh well, I don't know if this exercise is really that great. I don't know if that's what I want to do. I don't know if that's gonna help my goals.
Hmm. Yeah, and I think I want to go back on something that you just said is that, you know, there's always, you said that like, you know, comparing progress to other people's progress, and that's something that we all want to do. And it's something that we all do, you know,
Yeah.
like it doesn't matter what stage you are at. But you know, if you can get into your head and kick your ego aside and understand that, listen, if you're a bodybuilder, there's always going to be someone that's bigger than you. If you're trying
Mm-hmm.
to be a power lifter, there's always going to be someone that's stronger than you. There's always going to be someone, right? But that's irrelevant because their goals are like, even though your goals are similar, it doesn't matter, because if you're just starting and they're 10 years deep, then obviously that it's kind of like a no, you know, a no duh kind of moment where it's like, oh well, yeah, of course I can't compare myself. But if you just keep that in the front of your mind when you begin to do something like that, it makes it a whole lot easier in my opinion, because, you know, comparing yourself is something that, like, again, everyone does. I do. You said that you did. You know, everyone deals with it. So, you know, the sooner that you can just kind of like accept your own timeline, it makes it that much easier.
Yeah, and I like to throw in, I think I always had this mindset of, a lot of people lift heavy weights, and that was just not me. But, now that I'm like, I have more knowledge, I have more experience, there's a lot of huge athletes that, they'll work out with like dumbbells of like 10, 15, 20 pounds. And, that itself is more than enough weight for them. And they'll get a great workout session. And that's something I didn't understand at first. It took some time.
Yeah, a lot of times it's just objective numbers, you know, like, oh, he's lifting X, I'm lifting X, you know, like it, and it's more black and white, but you start to realize as you mature throughout the gym that it's more that gray area that's the most important of, you know, yes, you can move X weight, but, you know, is it relevant to your goal, and, you know, so on and so forth.
Yeah. Yeah, but do you want to talk about, maybe where you started? And I think both of our like paths will eventually line up, right?
Yeah, for sure. I'll go into it a little bit. My fitness journey is a little bit different to Jesus. I played basketball and volleyball. Um, we already talked about how the basketball weight training went. Volleyball weight training was essentially non-existent. Um, it was more about endurance for, you know, long games and stuff like that, and you know, a little bit of core strength here and there, but really nothing relevant to resistance training. Um, but I have to credit one of our mutual friends, Adit, right? If you know Adit, or shout out to Adit if he's listening. Um, we, in our junior year of high school, is when we both kind of found fitness YouTube. And man, how many years ago was that? It was probably around like 6, 7 years ago that I was a junior in high school. So this was when fitness YouTube was very fresh, right? There wasn't really a lot going on yet. And Adit and I would, you know, go on YouTube. We would look up workouts and we would get excited and we would talk to each other about it the next day. And Adit was like my original training partner. And that's where my journey started, was a junior in high school. And we didn't know what we were doing. We were just listening to influencer XYZ, but because we were new at the gym, we were making good progress. And you know, I had shifted my focus from just trying to get big just to get big, because I was very skinny, still fairly skinny, but I wanted to get stronger for my sport. I figured, like, yo, I'm not tall. So, you know, in sports that you need to be tall, you should at least get stronger, get faster, work on your other abilities that you can control, right? And that's what my main focus was. Um, but moving into college, again, I didn't go on to play any sports in college just because I was really serious about my schooling. I didn't think like I was that good to the point where I would, you know, want sports to take up that much of my life, you know? So
Mhm.
my main focus was school and training. And with my training, my goal was um, sort of similar, but because I didn't have any particular sport to get better at, it was more, I'm doing it because I enjoy doing it, right? And the main goal that I had was to, you know, essentially bodybuilding. It was essentially bodybuilding, right? You know, I wasn't trying to get super strong, but, you know, I wanted to get as big as I could for the sake of trying to figure out how big I could get, right?
Mhm.
But you know, my schooling, and like Jesus mentioned, this is where our paths kind of cross a little bit, is because I was in exercise science from the day that I stepped foot on campus. I had anatomy, physiology, I had functional anatomy, exercise physio, and it goes on and on and on, right? The classes, right? And the difference for me as a student versus some of the other people that were students in our major, at least, was that a lot of people wanted to be physical therapists, or they wanted to be athletic trainers or something like that. But they had no experience in the gym. So what set me apart was the fact that I was that meathead, but I was applying my science to my training, and that's what made it fun. That's what kept me going. And the training itself became that much more fun because I just learned the function of the pec, and I'm like, oh, internal rotation, shoulder flexion, and horizontal adduction across the body, maximized pec involvement. You best believe I was experimenting in the weight room later that day, trying to figure out what exercise that was to get me there, and that's what made it fun. And that's what keeps me here, is always learning the fact that, I may know a lot more than I once did, but I still don't know everything. And, treating the weight room, obviously in a safe way, as kind of like my playground, because a lot of people like to go to the gym, right? They go to the gym for the purpose of achieving a specific goal. And now that's fantastic. But where it differs from other individuals' experiences is that they want quick results, right? A lot of people go into the gym and say, I hate going to the gym, but I need to lose X amount of pounds for this, girls' vacation or spring break trip for the guys, and then once they do that, they achieve their goal. But then as soon as their big day that they were planning for, they go back to right where they were. And, I think learning to enjoy the process a little bit more is what keeps your results consistent and less of a roller coaster. We've talked about that before, specifically when it comes to like fat loss, how it's not like directly like a straight line down or anything like that. It's more of a down, up, down, and it's kind of like a wave as opposed to a linear process, right? But the more that you understand that this is a long-term thing, and you accept that makes it easier, in my opinion, because that's something that I struggled with a lot. That was one of the main things that I struggled with, was understanding that I'm not going to get somewhere super, super fast, and that's okay, because Jesus and I already talked about the whole comparing each other to, or comparing ourselves to other people, right? And that's something that I used to do. It's something that I still do. And it's something that you have to deal with on a day-to-day basis. But the more secure that you are in, understanding that, like, you have your own schedule, you have your own time, you have your own goals, that makes it easier to keep that process more of a straight line, as opposed to, again, that up and down kind of progress that a lot of people are used to,
Yeah, you brought up a really good point earlier when you were talking about how, like, so you've always been into training and working out, right? Bodybuilding.
Mm-hmm.
That's kind of like your background prior to going into college, and then you went into college, and you had these classes that we took in college. Were there any things that you noticed that you were doing because you were listening to like these influencers, and you're like, now that you went to school, you're learning about these things, you're like, I don't really necessarily need this, or yeah, you were right, but I think you were right and you left out this part of that?
There are instances like that. The one that I can isolate as an example is, there's a lot of people that were on fitness YouTube, and actually still are on fitness YouTube, that claimed that overtraining was good, that training the same thing every single day was good. If you like, they were basically taking the idea of trying to build muscle requires muscle breakdown, high volume, and progressive overload, right? Like all essential things, right? But they left out the part of recovery, and
Yeah.
that's like an instance. But I think that can be a whole nother episode of like things that we learned along the way that weren't true, like,
Mhm.
because yeah, the list goes on forever and ever and ever, because especially now you go on social media and some dude with a killer physique is like, oh, do this and this is how you get here, when he's completely 100% wrong. He was just blessed with the top 1% of genetics. So
Yeah.
I think maybe another episode would be better fitted for that. But yeah, definitely there's a whole bunch of misinformation out there that once you actually get solid education and do research for yourself, that the things that they're saying doesn't necessarily add up.
Yeah, and I also want to bring up one more thing that you said. You were talking about how like a lot of people get ready for certain events, like it could be like a spring break, summer, saying like, oh yeah, I'm gonna drop this amount of weight, or I'm gonna build this amount of muscle for this specific event, and then what happens afterwards? I was also um, a victim of this because I would also be like, oh, my birthday's coming up. I want to drop this amount of weight for my birthday. You
Mm-hmm.
know, to this day, I still do that, but I think I have more realistic goals for myself.
Mm-hmm.
But back then, I would say the same exact thing, and I didn't realize, we always talk about this. It's more of a lifestyle change and not like a temporary hobby. Otherwise, like if you're just doing this temporarily, or saying you want to reach this goal that's coming up in like a few weeks or a couple months, like then it's not going to hurt you when that time comes and you decide to stop, because you're going to be like, oh well, I trained for 12 weeks and then yeah, now I'm good.
Yeah, and I have a not necessarily a story, but something that I would like to share with everyone, because I think this might be useful. um Again, I was a trainer, or I still am a trainer technically, but not for any gym in particular. But when I was a trainer for a gym, um, if someone came through that door, right, and said, I'm trying to lose X pounds for this event, you basically didn't even have to sell that person at that point. Because this, like a woman would come in and say, hey, I just signed up for the gym, and my wedding is in 2 months, and I need to lose 30 pounds. And whether you can do that or not, it is technically doable. Um, like sorry, I think I'm veering off. The reason that this is important is because if you have that very superficial short-term goal, it's not going to be something that you're going to be happy with for the long term. Again, this sounds kind of like a no duh kind of moment, but when you say, I'm just trying to lose fat for my wedding to fit into my dress or something like that, or I'm just trying to lose weight for a trip for the guys or something, um, that's not sustainable. And although you can technically achieve those goals, you approach them the same way that you would any other long-term goal. But the difference is that if you don't achieve that short-term goal that's very unrealistic, you may end up being disappointed and developing a very poor relationship with the gym and your body for that matter. So
Hmm.
this is why we really preach long-term kind of all the time. I'm sure all of you guys are like sick of hearing it by now, but like preparing to do something for the long term and then ending up achieving things in a shorter timeline is a much better thought process to have, in my opinion, because you, by setting yourself up with these high expectations, and then whether you achieve them or not, you end up reverting back to the way that you were because you only did it for that sole purpose of, you know, again, trip XYZ. It's not going to be something that you're going to be happy with for the long term. And I think that's what we want, is good relationships with your body, your training, and again, to understand that your timeline is hopefully forever. You know, like you should be doing this for the rest of your life. You know, you may not enjoy it as much right now as you may in a year or two from now, but you know, I just think that's important to keep in mind because those small goals may keep us going, but you have to make sure that your mindset and your expectations are in the right place, you know?
Yeah, that's a really good point. I always like to say like your why to why you're doing this has to be so great that once you stop, like it has to really hurt you and be like, damn, like I really just I can't do this anymore, right? And until you find, I think that's when you'll be successful in reaching your goals.
Hmm. Yeah, for sure. And hmm, is there anything else that you feel is like important from your like personal fitness journey that, you know, people may benefit from for like benefit hearing?
Yeah, I think I have one last thing I want to mention. I think when I was first starting off, I didn't know what I wanted to do and like how to do it. I was kind of just trying different things, and I think I got frustrated because I kept changing. I was like, oh yeah, I want to do like more like CrossFit training. And then one day I was like, nah, I think I just want to go straight to weight training. It's a little bit of bodybuilding. And I was like, no, you know what? Kind of want to try like a boot camp type of class, like high intensity exercises, and I kept jumping back and forth. And I think one thing I could take away from all that is when you're starting off, if you're starting from ground zero, at the end of the day, you're not really losing anything because all whatever you do, whatever kind of workout and fitness you do, it's beneficial, it's good, but
Hmm.
eventually you got to find something that works for you. And we talked about this, whether it's your like weight loss goal, gaining weight, building muscle goal, but eventually you'll just catch on. Like if you do something for a certain amount of weeks, certain amount of months, it's gonna work for you. You just got to stay consistent. And that's one thing I didn't learn because I think you know I wasn't patient enough. I kept trying to switch from doing one thing to the other, and I wasn't actually seeing proper results.
Yeah, and I think the thing that I want to wrap this up with is going back to you saying your why is the most important because I think that's 100% true, right? The how doesn't matter. We get questions all the time saying, "Oh, is CrossFit bad? Is strength is powerlifting bad? Like what is the best way to get to my goal?" And it's like, well, first of all, you got to identify your goal, and then figure out what you enjoy doing. Because the how really doesn't matter if you do it long enough, right? I do bodybuilding, but that's just my cup of tea. Jesus used to be a long distance runner. He if that's what he likes doing, that's what I would recommend doing. Whatever keeps you there the longest is what's going to be the best for you. And that applies to dieting, right? Like, oh, what diet is the best for losing weight? Well, I don't know. What does your diet look like? There's so many variables that come into play, but if you always understand that the how doesn't really matter, it's the why and what's most important to you and what's most enjoyable for you. And I think that's how you get to your goals the the most pleasant way possible, and also probably the most efficient way possible if it's something that you enjoy. So
Yeah, I
um,
think yeah, I think well said. Your why and your how they play together, perfect.
cool. Yeah, I mean, I think we'll wrap it up here, guys. I hope that hearing Jesus's story helped you guys. I hope that hearing my story helped you guys maybe in a different way. Again, we don't have the same exact journey, and no one does. So hopefully you learn some things in a different way. Normally we do a little bit more teaching style videos where we get a little bit more sciency with you and try and convey things that we've learned from our education. But today we tried to make it a little bit more about how we learned things from our experience. And hopefully you guys enjoyed that because we have more to say than just fitness itself. And if you guys enjoyed that, let us know because we'd love to make more videos that are from our experience or that veer off from training, nutrition, fitness, all that kind of stuff. If you would like to hear it. But Jesus, you have any closing comments you want to add to this?
No, no, I think I really love doing these kind of videos where, it's not necessarily science based, it's more our personal experiences because I think you and I have a lot to share. Just like how we said, we're students of the game, right? So we're
Hmm.
always constantly learning something new. Some one day we'll say something, another day we'll be like, oh yeah, turns out there's something even better. So now we have something more to say. So yeah, if you like these kind of videos, let us know. Definitely we'll love to do more of these.
Yeah. But as always, guys, thank you guys for tuning in. We hope you enjoyed. But until next time, guys, peace.
Peace out.